Hello and welcome to the EFN Presents Review for Season 4, Episodes 25 and 26, Twilight's Kingdom. Joining me today, I have Index.
Hello.
Kibbie the Great.
Hi.
Kiniro.
What up?
Larscis.
Hey.
And Wub.
I'm not going abroad, no matter how many times you tell me.
Yes, you are.
It is a full house and we have 2 episodes to get through here, so let's get started. The first thing I want to cover right off the bat, it's not Princess Twilight, it's not Discord, it's the villain. There was some conjecture that we might have seen the return of Chrysalis or even Sombra in this episode. But no, we have a new villain, at least new to Generation 4. This is Tyrek, a Generation 1 villain who they've resurrected. What do you guys think about the reintroduction of this character and the role they've given him in moving the Gen 4 world forward?
Well, first, I thought he was a good villain, but I was really hoping that the villain they would have brought back would have been Smooth.
Looking for a little bit more Lovecraft in your ponies, are you?
I was actually hoping for Chrysalis to return because we never got a backstory on why she wanted to take over Equestria.
I think part of the problem with bringing back a character like Chrysalis is she wasn't really evil. She was just looking out for her kingdom, and it wasn't going to work out too well for the ponies. Whereas Sombra and, in this episode, Tyrek are just malevolent forces, and you need that in this episode. You need that embodiment of anti-friendship, because that's really who the villain of friendship needs to be.
Well, you were mentioning the introduction there. I still say it played out just like a Fringe introduction, where you have the innocent person walking through the place where they're obviously going to get murdered or something.
Fringe is unfortunately another one of those shows I've yet to watch. But I kind of see what you're getting at. It definitely had that very foreboding mood to it. It actually kind of reminded me of the opening to Magic Duel.
The introduction to Tyrek felt like the introduction with Trixie with the hood behind the amulet, but aside from that, that's all I could see.
The thing that I actually really noticed how they introduced Tyrek was the fact that, I don't think they've ever really introduced a villain in this show, in that dark of, a setting before. They kind of had, a real, spoopy setting right there where, it was all dark and evil and scary, something you wouldn't normally see in a little girl's show.
I really love how it's mysterious as well, because for the previous villains, we usually see who they are, what their names are, but for Tyrek, it's more of a mysterious. We have no idea what this pony does, unless you watch G1. I'm sorry, not pony. Was he a centaur?
Yeah, Tyrek came from originally the G1, one of the G1 specials. I believe it was the original one, correct me if I'm wrong. And honestly, because I've watched the original one, a lot of their character traits are actually the same. It's kind of odd, but really awesome.
Where's Casey? She could give us a full backstory on this guy.
Well, I personally felt that Alex Trebek was being too hard against the ponies on this one, to be honest. He was just stealing their magic left and right, and he really just wanted to take over.
Tyrek from Generation 1. I recently saw the first and second episode for Generation 1 of MLP. I noticed that he uses a sort of bag to take the pony's, you could say, essence, but it turns them into a whole new different evil creature. But for G4, it just gets rid of, you could say, their flying, their magic. It just gets rid of that, and it gets rid of their cutie marks.
That's actually an interesting observation, because this is a key episode too. So Tyrek and his powers are filling a very specific role in the narrative. He's filling the same role as the Flim Flam brothers, being anti-honesty, and Suri being anti-generosity. Tyrek is anti-friendship, but he's not really tempting or persuading Twilight along that path. At least not until the very end. I guess you could argue that by stealing powers he is being anti-magic, but ultimately it seems like he's just intended to be a threat, a force that Twilight has to confront, to make that choice of her friends over her magic, but that's not really his plan to begin with.
One of the things that actually I noticed when Celestia and Luna were talking to Cadence and Twilight in their secret room about Tyrek was the fact that they brought out the book that you originally saw in the first episode of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. And I actually haven't seen that book tossed around in the show a lot. And it was actually pretty cool to see some of that original, old like art style that you saw in the very first episode coming back again.
Well, it's a fitting use for the book. We haven't seen this kind of world building of Equestria's history since Twilight's flashbacks in the season 4 premiere.
I think that's the title of that book, Plot and Exposition.
Well, it's a necessary evil because he's a new villain, but they don't dwell on his introduction too much. And I like the fact that they tie his resurgence in the show into one of the earlier episodes, It's About Time, back in season 2. That's where Cerberus is running loose in Ponyville, and as Luna states, they believe that that's when Tyrek managed to escape Tartarus. Yet again, another dash of Greek mythology in the show.
You know, my roommate and I have this theory on both Ponyville and the Skull and Equestria Girls, where it's just like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and they're over a Hellmouth.
Tell you what, if there's a Hellmouth in the next Equestria Girls movie, I'll buy you a drink. As for Tyrek, though, some people seem to think he's a cardboard villain. He has no real motivation. I've touched a bit on the role that he needed to play in this episode and how he kind of fit that role, but how do you think Tyrek stacks up against the other villains we've seen in the series?
This villain definitely beats Sombra, to say the least. Sombra had, like, no real backstory at all in the actual show. And, I mean, Celestia did kind of explain a little bit of a backstory about where he came from and how many, many years ago he had originally tried to do this, but got defeated a long time ago. So, I mean, to try to crunch all of that in a little 45, 46-minute finale altogether, I'd say they pulled it off pretty well for a storyline, and they did a pretty good job.
Exactly, and the fact that they even did a throwback to the G1 villain itself, Scorpan actually does exist in G1, and wasn't necessarily, if I remember correctly, wasn't necessarily Tyrek's brother, but was his ally up until the very end. So it was actually nice to see that throwback and just having Scorpan being thrown into the backstory. That was actually very, very nice. Thank you for bringing that G1 reference back.
And, you know, another one of those episodes that Megan writes, you can almost always expect some type of, like, old, like, Greek or Roman mythology type characters as well, or settings. And it's cool to see that they're still moving forward with that kind of theme in the show.
I think a lot of what I really liked about Tyrek's character comes down to the mystery, the atmosphere, the uncertainty to the introduction of Tyrek's character. He's a very unassuming villain. He's just this frail little guy in that cloak. With Sombra, he just gets a blast of exposition. Here's the villain, he's really bad, before we even see him. And then he never really accomplishes much directly. His status as a villain is just decreed to the viewer. We don't need any of that with Tyrek. The audience can see and judge the character by his actions in his very first scene. The backstory weaves him into the universe of the show, but his place as a villain is more organic, set up by the show and decided by the viewer. You tell yourself that he's the bad guy. The characters aren't doing that for you.
Yeah, so it's being more engaging for the viewer.
They redeemed themselves from season 3.
The way he was portrayed there with the cloak over his head and the glowing eyes visible was a lot like Anubis from Stargate SG-1, where you could just tell by looking at him that he was supposed to be evil.
I'm afraid that every reference you're gonna make is gonna be completely lost on me. But talking about the eyes, now this is unconfirmed right now, and the eyes are different, so I could be completely wrong on this, but do you think that this has anything to do with the hooded figure that we saw at the end of the Castlemania episode?
That is interesting.
I would like to say yes.
I'm going to say no, because if it was, he would have spotted Twilight and known there would have been a fourth alicorn.
Ah, yeah, good point, good point.
Oh, very.
Well, I suppose Tyrek isn't the only villain in this episode, is he? So, before we get into all the princessy details, what do you guys think of Discord's role in all of these events?
Oh boy.
I think it was really nice to finally see him in a more, in a different light for a change. Like, seeing him truly redeem himself, really understand the error of his ways, and seeing how he affects Fluttershy and how they affect him. I kind of liked that perspective.
Well, we haven't really seen too much of Discord's past, but he's never really seemed like the kind to work with people. And whenever we've seen him play fast and loose with the rules, it's usually been more out of mischief than malice. So it's probably a new experience for him to be betrayed like this, especially since his reformation.
It was a humbling experience for him.
I mean, it's something that has been done in other shows before, and I'm going to give a shout out to Jack's Blade right here because Dragon Ball Z nailed it pretty well with Vegeta as well. And I mean, in ways, you can easily turn a villain into a good guy in shows, and they pulled it off pretty damn well.
Yeah, you have to actually have the villain go through that trial and tribulation to become the hero or the good guy. Because right here, he slipped back into his old vices. And when he realized that going through these motions to take over, I got betrayed. I'm not going to be the one on top. I'm gonna get screwed. And that's when he realized, oh, I messed up.
It's like the friendship challenges he went through in this episode reminded me of like the punk kid in high school that tried using his friends to be friends with more popular friends and then kind of got ripped of all of his reputation. So relatable.
Well, Discord isn't a main character, so he's not going to have as much opportunity for development as the main six. It's been over a season since we've seen Discord reformed, since the Keep Calm and Flutter On episode. But we haven't seen him change too much. There's always been that tension in their friendship, with the main six not seeming very trusting of him, and Discord walking that line of deserving this suspicion, but also calling them out on their treatment of him despite being called a friend. It's almost like they're in a Cold War. They're like, oh, we're friends, right? Oh, yeah, we're friends. I don't trust you, but we're friends. So do you guys think this is the rounding off of the plot arc of Discord's reformation? He gives flowers to Celestia for crying out loud. Do you guys think that the existing tension between Discord, the main six, is basically dissolved at this point?
I mean, with the way that they kind of play off the kind of role model Discord is, I don't think we'll ever see it completely go away. I think we'll see a lot more or less of it, but you're definitely probably still going to see him in future episodes, maybe, I don't know, messing around with something and making crazy stuff happen, but maybe in a less evil way, I'd say.
Well, going back to how they initially designed Discord, he's a Q. You know, yeah, you can have that love-hate relationship with him, but he's not truly going to be one saying he's absolutely your ally, but he's not absolutely your enemy either. He's just there for fun.
I think that's the best way to sum up Discord since his reformation. He's definitely more Q-like. Sometimes, like in Three's a Crowd, he just tests the ponies to see how they'll react. But often he'll actually help his friends, but he doesn't hold their hand. His help is almost a test, where they have to be clever enough to, in a sense, prove that they're worthy of his help. Like in this episode where he provides them the journal passages, but they have to figure out the significance of that for themselves.
Discord's personality is an interesting one, that's pretty much all I have to say, but the way that the main six has treated him before the whole Twilight Castle, it just kept me cringing like, come on, you gotta give him some trust. I mean, look at Fluttershy. They pretty much have a sort of close bond between Discord and Fluttershy, yet the other five don't really see how or why. Probably because of her kindness that Discord really likes about Fluttershy.
Do you think that the princess is kind of messed up here? Because in the first episode, Tyrek wasn't a threat at all. He was barely able to attack a single pony in a dark alley. They had 4 alicorns in Discord at their disposal, and they choose to send him on his own. Do you think that they could have gotten off their butts and maybe prevented the whole second half of the story?
And they probably more so wrote it that way just to kind of make it, and people might kill me for this, but more of a filler episode to give more or less like a more background on the villain himself a little bit. So that way the viewers can see, what's his current motive right now? What is he trying to work toward?
I don't know if I would call it filler, but there's definitely a lot that has to be set up here because we've been building it up for the entire season. We have Twilight's situation as a princess, the box, Discord. It is a lot to set up, and I'm kind of glad they take their time instead of trying to rush through it. Because ultimately, that's the point of the episode.
Thinking about what Celestia had said, why she wanted Discord to do it when Twilight was explaining it to her friends, it really did make sense, because Discord is able to sense whenever there's like a sudden disturbance in magic. So as odd as it sounded just to have him solely go alone, it sort of made sense because he's kind of the only person that can sense that stuff.
Yeah, he's the only Jedi in Equestria.
He could have led them there, though.
I just wanted to make a comment on his introduction to the episode. Mary Poppins, Patton, I forget what the scooter one was.
The scooter one was, I believe, from Littlest Pet Shop. Like, I don't watch the show, but what's her name has the same scooter as Discord.
It was an actual crossover piece. Even Mike Vogel had mentioned that on Twitter earlier during the episode.
And the whole bit Discord did about growing a pair of pink wings with a unicorn horn, saying that maybe he'll become an alicorn princess so he can smile and wave at people. Oh, that was salt in the wounds for Twilight at that time.
Speaking of Twilight, we need to discuss the focus of this episode, which is Princess Twilight Sparkle and her role as an alicorn in Equestria. Her title has been a bit of a sore spot with fans this season. People have complained when other ponies in the show haven't treated her like a princess. They've complained that they don't want her to act like a princess.
No, to get what the fans are going to rage about, let's just go with a brief mention of Flash Sentry. And we're done. Moving on.
I loved how it was like not even 5 minutes in the episode and he's boom right there on screen talking. I'm just like, you know what? I'm kind of glad he's talking because Vincent Tong is a great voice actor and I'm kind of glad to hear him talking again.
It was one line.
I don't even want to give the voice actor a chance. Dang.
Well, I mean, I didn't see people complain about it on Twitter. They really liked the whole fight, seeing how the finale ended. So, Flash Sentry, I don't care.
I just like that at the beginning, Twilight actually admits, she says, "It doesn't seem like my role as a princess equates to all that much." Season 4 in a nutshell, people.
I forgot which convention I heard of that, but I know it was a convention sometime within the past year where the writers had talked about what they were doing with Twilight in the show. And this episode really kind of showcased like what their goal is to do with Twilight, and that's the fact of they are going to have an episode here and there where it will focus on her princess role, but it's not going to be every episode. And in a way, it is kind of good to show, that she's still a new princess and she's still trying to figure out what her duties are, to say the least. And it kind of makes sense that they now, to this point, try to focus a little more on that because they kind of put it on pause since the end of season 3 almost.
Well, you do have Twilight and Cadence meet again at Three's a Crowd, but that wasn't really much of a royal thing, even though, yeah, Cadence said, "You don't have to bow to me, we're sisters-in-law. Nothing formal here, we're just hanging out." And it's funny, too, because no one around Ponyville was like, "Oh, it's the princess, it's Princess Twilight and Princess Cadence, oh my goodness." Yeah, none of that happened.
And just to play devil's advocate, the people of Ponyville are probably used to having the princess around by now.
Twilight time.
Just remember, all the kids in Ponyville are crazy about Princess Twilight.
Hey, she went from being a humble resident of Ponyville to living in a giant freaking crystal castle that towers above everybody else.
A tree castle.
You guys are jumping the shark, though. We're not to that point yet.
I think you mean jumping the gun. But as far as them sending their power to Twilight, one thing that kind of stuck out to me is the fact that they say they're giving it to Twilight because they don't think that Tyrek is aware of a 4th alicorn, despite the fact that they are aware that Discord is helping Tyrek, and Discord knows that Twilight's a princess.
All I want to know is how he doesn't know about Twilight but knew about Cadence. Cadence hasn't been a princess that long. Has Cadence been around longer than we realize? Is Shining Armor a lot older than we realize? What are people's ages? I don't know anymore because he knows about Cadence but doesn't know about Twilight. Something doesn't add up.
Oh, well, she's been a princess 2 seasons longer.
I mean, maybe something could have gotten through when Cerberus got out. That's the only thing I can think of, really.
Well, even in the show exposition, they said that he escaped when Cerberus left its post. So he knew about Cadence during that time period, shortly after he escaped. Because if you think about it, it's, a season and a half afterwards, so he's already been out in the world for quite some time, so he probably would have heard word of it by then. But the whole giving all the magic to Twilight, look at it from the perspective of, you can either hide 4 needles in a haystack, or you can hide 1 needle in a haystack. What's going to be harder to find?
Give it to Scootaloo. If you wanted to hide it, just give it to Scootaloo. Although, yes, I know you probably can't dump alicorn magic into Scootaloo and not have her, blow up or something like that.
Well, he's been out in the world that long, and, her coronation was kind of a big deal. So is he just behind on his subscription to the New York Times or something?
I guess one nice thing about Twilight getting the power of the other alicorns is additional princess power means additional distancing from her friends. We've seen in a lot of the previous episodes, Twilight's royal duties were interfering with some of the things she was used to doing, whether it was just sitting with her friends at the Equestria Games, or she has to end up judging her friends in the Tradia episode at the end. She has to be impartial despite those being her friends. At the beginning of this episode, she says she wants power, basically. She says, Luna races the moon, Celestia races the sun, Caden says the Crystal Empire. What exactly do I do? What do I have? And she gets the power, and it really doesn't help her at all, does it?
It's not really if she wanted the power, it's more like, what is my role within Equestria? Since I'm a princess now, what is my duty? What am I supposed to do?
I just think it's hilarious when she actually does get the power. Like, she's kind of put on, like, magic steroids, and things just start flying around everywhere, and she suddenly has, like, amazing speed that she can't control. Kind of like a new superhero that just found out about powers they've never had before.
As well as teleporting from city to city.
I know that Twilight wasn't really after power, but those are the examples she uses. Celestia's power, Luna's power, Cadence's empire. She wants what they have, and she gets it, literally. But just having power doesn't give her anything. Becoming a princess distanced Twilight from her friends, and in her quest to find meaning as a princess, she almost loses them.
Sometimes you never know what you're gonna get when you actually get something you wish for.
Well, and Tyrik's ultimatum is just a wonderfully crafted scene. Throughout Season 4, Twilight's had to make choices about being a princess or being a friend. Here she's literally forced to choose between the two. At least that's how it's set up. We've assumed, and Twilight's assumed, that being a princess meant acting a certain way, but the choice she makes here, putting her friends before herself, is exactly what she needed to do as the princess she is.
Friendship is magic.
It's just such an elegant setup that's how she gets her key. That's her test.
Actually, yeah, let's get on the topic of the keys. The way they find out about the keys is actually when they're in the old castle. Twilight looks at the book that Discord had put bookmarks in, the same book that they've been writing about their stories in, and he conveniently bookmarked all the pages where they can find out, hey, I think this might be a key.
You thought that was a little weak?
I mean, it's one of those things where the writers made it sound like in the first episode that Celestia and Luna really didn't even have an idea on what exactly the box was for and what they needed to open it. So what's making me wonder is, how did Discord, of all people, know?
Goes back to Discord being, yet again, a 120% example of a Q. I mean, they were even made the character based on Q. I mean, that's what Lauren, I think, whoever it was that created the character said that's exactly who he's based on. If you know anything about Q, he's kind of omnipotent in a sense. So it doesn't surprise me at all that he knows more than what people realize. He just has so much fun knowing so much. He loves to see the story play out and people learn lessons and stuff. He takes great joy in trying to shape a story and watching it, I mean, you would do this too. Otherwise, everything would be boring if you knew the answer to everything. You help people where you can, but in the end, you really want to just see how they can do it themselves.
He'll put people on a path just to see them walk down it. He's like, oh, let's see how this turns out.
I mean, that's how he is. He loves having fun. Even if he already knows the answers to things can still change. He just wants to see how they do it. That's his source of entertainment.
We should have seen that. Even I saw that T-Rex was going to betray Discord at one point. I mean, it's pretty obvious, in a way.
It's pretty ironic, actually, when T-Rex and Discord actually make it to the castle in Canterlot, when they're walking through the hall with all the, the frames that tell, like, the stories of big things that have happened so far in the show. It's kind of ironic that after how much he smack-talked about Discord being friends with ponies, about how silly friendship was, that he hands Discord that amulet necklace thing, saying that that's going to show his loyalty to him as a friend.
He's mocking Discord in that moment because he knows that the amulet is worthless. And that's why I loved that the amulet is Twilight's key that she got by putting her friends before herself, because that amulet was given by a betrayer to a betrayer to a betrayer. It's almost cursed in that regard.
Yeah.
Scorpan betrayed his brother, even though from the pony's point of view, he's a good guy. Tyrek betrayed Discord, and Discord had betrayed the ponies. So he's just completely mocking Discord in that moment, and he's doing it basically to show contempt for Discord, because Discord is so naive of what's going on.
So the amulet goes to a betrayer, from a betrayer to a betrayer to Twilight. What is this foreshadowing?
Foreshadow?
M.A. Larson, what are you planning for season 5?
What amused me is how she even acknowledged Discord as a friend, and that's all it really took right there is like, bam, key. It's like, wow.
Well, even despite what Discord did, Twilight doesn't betray him. So in that respect, Twilight broke the chain, right? And that's really the first time that Twilight shows Discord true friendship, not détente. That was sort of the first true friendship that little piece of jewelry came across.
That's pretty interesting, because I thought since when Discord gave her the medallion, I thought it was like, are you serious? I was honestly thinking it'd be her crown that would give her the key. Like, she had the key the whole time, she just didn't know it. But since you guys put reason on why that medallion was so important, yeah, I can see now why that would be Twilight's key.
Alright, I think I know the next thing that needs to be discussed.
That fight?
Yes, that fight.
It was Dragon Ball Z, but a lot more watchable because there wasn't 20 minutes of someone charging up.
We all thought that the season 2 finale, the fight with all the changelings, was good. Oh my gosh, this episode.
You can't have a fight more epic than this. I mean, it's a 4-in-1 alicorn versus every pony in Equestria. That's pretty much what it is.
They acknowledged they were evenly matched.
They did.
The one really disappointing loss out of the entire battle, though, Twilight's library.
Oh man.
Oh god, yeah. She was completely at peace until her library got destroyed. Then it was on.
It was those burning book carcasses that landed around her that set her off, and she's like, no.
There's an actual reason to that. If you go back just a couple episodes when they were doing the whole...
I know. Her books have sentimental value to her, and she lost all that sentimental value in that home. All those memories of all the time when she first moved there. It gets pretty deep, man, the more you think about it.
I mean, for Superman, it's his girlfriend that makes him snap. For Goku, it's Krillin being demolished by Frieza is what makes him snap. With Twilight, it's books being burned.
Speaking of Twilight's house, that house is more than just a house. It has all of her special moments, like her first welcoming party with Pinky and the other main six, which she had no reason, she didn't want to be friends with them at the first place until afterwards. We also have things such as Twilight's first mental breakdown. She's in bed trying to figure out what am I supposed to do? I'm gonna be tardy, and other stuff like that. Now we can see why she snapped.
Heck, that's the last place in Equestria she was before she became an alicorn.
Exactly.
Because the whole magical mystery cure, that's where she ended up in that ethereal plane with Celestia, was from the library.
As a good note to those of you who are intellectually, literally awesome, just make sure you keep the book Fahrenheit 451 away from Twilight, because that incident might happen again.
Well, no, that as a fight, I know some people are calling it filler. I kind of called it filler because it doesn't do anything. All it says is, oh, we're evenly matched. But I guess you can't have 4-in-1 Alicorn Twilight and powerful as every pony in Equestria Tyrek and not have an epic showdown, even if it doesn't accomplish anything, can you?
No, you can't.
That the box when all of the main six got, you could say, their rainbow power. Yeah, that honestly didn't make any sense to me. But how else we were supposed to defeat them? We had to use the elements of harmony, but the elements of harmony wasn't really used. It's more just rainbow power, which I didn't really like.
Well, that's the little toyetic element of this story, isn't it? That's the entire reason. That was the build-up. It was for the rainbow-powered ponies, and ultimately we just have to accept that that's the direction that they took it.
getting on the rainbow power subject, they did not look anything like I thought they were going to look like, to be honest. Rarity looked like a breezy.
Rainbow Dash has just completely gone Super Saiyan 3 on everything.
Like, even if you want to look at, oh, why did this happen to go this perspective? Even if it was toyetic, look at another series that was toyetic, Power Rangers. They had to kill off or get rid of the power coins and the morphers and changed it to something else, and they wrote it the right way, too. For those of you who watched the original Power Rangers.
Yeah, we can't really dwell on the rainbow power thing. We know where it came from. It's not a surprise. It's not a mystery. We saw how the writers handled Princess Twilight this season, after the season 3 finale. And they handled the rainbow power the same way here. They don't make it the focus. They don't let it overpower the spirit of the show. The lessons and the characters remain paramount. And that's just another testament to the quality of the work that everybody behind this show puts forward.
Actually, I'm looking back at the rainbow power thing, and it sort of makes sense, because when the box was finally open, they unleash all of their magic or power onto T-Rex, and then afterwards, this is just me thinking, but they had to use the power that they gained from that rainbow power to give every pony around Equestria back their cutie marks, their flying skills, and magic. So I'm thinking of it more as you could say of a big bang, but instead of the universe, it's just the essence of magic, flying, and whatever Earth ponies get.
Going back to the first 2 episodes, people need to realize where this stuff came from. If you're watching what happens when the box opens, it's pulling the power from the Tree of Harmony, which has the elements of harmony in it. These powers are the elements of harmony, just kind of twisted up a little bit. So it makes sense of what they're doing at the end. They're restoring harmony again to Equestria. That's what these powers are. They're the elements of harmony, just a different twist now.
I like the parallel with the Cutie Mark Chronicles, where the Sonic Rain Boom is how they get their cutie marks. And you have that same sort of rainbow explosion as they're going across Equestria, restoring cutie marks. So I don't know if that's intentional, but I wouldn't be surprised considering how much continuity there is in this episode.
I want to say it could have been intentional.
Like, how else are they going to get their cutie marks and talents back? Also derpy. Just want to point that out.
I know that some people were conjecturing that Twilight's castle was going to be the two sisters' old castle, and I'm kind of glad they didn't do that, because Twilight isn't following in their footsteps. Twilight is on her own path, and it's a nice way of representing that she's not like reliving something or continuing something that someone else started. She's going her own way.
What the best part about Twilight's castle, though, all the ponies in Ponyville walking up to it with just their jaws drop. I mean, it's one of those moments where you gotta sit there and think what the citizens of Ponyville have been put through the past year and a half. And then now all of a sudden they see this giant crystal tree out of the middle of nowhere in their town that's towering over all the other buildings now.
It doesn't fit the rustic decor at all.
It's crystal.
I get the feeling that for like the next season, I mean, if you think about it, she got this new house now. They've all got their thrones. Their new mission's apparently going to be spreading friendship throughout Equestria. There's no more elements of harmony now. They've got the rainbow power thing. I don't know if we're going to see that ever come back and being used again. But from what I'm seeing, the way this episode ended, it's going to change their entire goal for the next season, for one. And there could be a chance of Chrysalis maybe again.
I just realized that her castle has a terrible pun name.
Which is?
Look at it in this picture. It is the Twilight House.
The puns.
Oh, Lord.
Oh my gosh. Look how unhumble that house is, too.
Just imagine when the sun rises in the morning, how many ponies are going to go blind?
Just think of Mare. She's probably out of a job. We'll just have to see what the writers do with some of these changes next season, but it's no surprise that we're getting all of these changes now because it's the season finale. And being the season finale, it has the requisite musical numbers. What did you guys think of the songs here?
I wasn't really paying attention to the songs.
Luna
I'm sorry.
singing? Come on, Luna singing.
Besides that.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are happy about that part.
I want that song on an album right now.
The songs were really good. Maybe not as good as some of the other season finales, but they were still really good. And Actually, I'm gonna expect some trance remixes of them because it would fit that kind of genre really well.
You know, the fact that we had, two characters that hadn't really had a moment to sing before, I think that was kind of a nice little touch.
Who's
really,
the two characters?
Cadence and Luna.
Oh no, Cadence had her own song, man. She had her whole.
Well, often
She had her whole own song, This Day Aria.
Technically, it wasn't her own.
I would roll with Celestia and Luna.
it's really the fact that you have those two singing together is what I was trying to make a point for.
She brings a Disney feel to her music.
Well, going back and listening to the songs, I absolutely loved You'll Play Your Part. But when I saw that in the episode, it really felt stilted. You had Twilight just going through these big motions, this melodramatic singing, and the three princesses are just kind of standing around doing nothing. It really picks up, but it's a far cry from some of the wonderfully visual songs that we've seen this season. And in the episode, the song suffers because of it.
I want to point out a small thing that happened in the ending, near the ending. When the main six were together singing their last song and the rainbow just went up to the sky, it went around everywhere for when each of the main six got their keys. When they realized their element. Like we see Coco Pomo, we see Cheese Sandwich, we even see the Breezies. And I just like that. We get a bit of a recap of Season 4 on what the main six has been through in order to get their keys and to open the box and whatnot.
It's like in Season 2 when Twilight was casting the spells on all of her friends where they were revisiting their past memories. It's one of those feels trips because you remember the entire season.
It's a way of reminding us of the lives that they've touched and the positive impacts of the examples that each of the main six set. Which is important because we're not just justifying Twilight becoming a princess, we're justifying her friend's position at her side as Princess Twilight.
It's amazing. Another small thing, this isn't from me, but I saw a tweet about it, about each season. Like Season 1, Twilight discovering friendship. Season 2, you could see their friendship is getting stronger. In Season 3, they're preparing for a change since Twilight is becoming a princess. And Season 4 is just fulfilling your element. I didn't think of that, but someone tweeted it, and I just pointed out that is absolutely true. So that makes me wonder, what will Season 5 be?
It's kind of like what me and Ramble have hit on, I think, on a couple of the episode reviews now. They closed some doors, but they left a lot more open. And I think it's going to be really weird to see what they're going to do with next season now. Because the way they left off this season, Twilight's in a really hardcore princess role now. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they're going to take Season 5. What did you think about this season, and what do you think will happen next season? Like, what do you think it's going to go toward?
What I thought about this season was absolutely fantastic. Season 2 was my favorite, but since Season 4 happened, I gotta put my hands down for Season 4. It's really amazing. We saw a lot of great episodes and a lot of build-up between each character. What I also like is that we revisited each of the main six and their element. What I think about the future in Season 5, that's actually going to put me in question, since Twilight has her own, you could technically say, kingdom. She's a princess, she has a castle. What's going to happen? Is she going to have an apprentice? Is stuff like that, it puts you in a question.
Index.
This season, honestly, I'm really happy to see a lot of character development, so I really have to say that this is now my favorite season. As for next season, with the whole introduction with her being the princess of friendship and her mission, spreading friendship around Equestria, I kind of get the feeling that might be what they're going to focus on. Going around the country or world or whatever they call it, passing on what they've learned. We might see Chrysalis come back next season because they have a tendency of bringing people back. I think they were more focused this season, on developing the characters, but next season, it's free game. With Larson around, there's no telling what we're going to see.
Kiniro?
Honestly, I just really enjoyed the fact there was continuity, there was references to the older generations, a lot more pop culture references for us older folks, and in all honesty, I just love the fact that there was, it really felt like there was a good golden age of comedy and cartoon comedy that returned for this season. And that's what I thoroughly enjoyed about this entire set of episodes. But going forward, I don't know what to expect. Maybe based off the castle, maybe a whole like Knights of the Round Table type of situation, but who knows? I'll just wait and see.
Larscis.
I think this season exemplifies a trend and shows that I like, where season 4 is always one of my favorites. I like the fact that they brought in new writers to sort of return the show to its roots in season 1, which is still my personal favorite. And as for what we're going to go into, the fact that they drastically improved the animation shows that they're serious about making the show, and as for what we're going to go into next, I'm not going to speculate. I want to be surprised.
So you can obviously tell that this season was really well written, obviously because of the fact that they probably weren't working on Equestria Girls while they were writing this season at the same time. It was really good to see this season kind of go back to the roots of the show, where a lot of the episodes were actually based around friendship again and about good morals of being a good friend throughout the entire season. I'm kind of in the same boat. I want to think about season 5, but yet again I don't. Because season 5 is kind of one of those first seasons where people really don't know what's going to happen. The season finale really left off on a big cliffhanger on what the main 6 is going to be doing in the show. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see where the writers are going to take the show now.
Not only did season 4 reach back to the roots of the show, back to the elements of harmony, the lessons of friendship, but for really the first time, it was clear that the season was building to something. In this finale, nothing is sacred, and elements of the show once considered immutable or untouchable are broken down. We see the Alicorn princesses powerless, just waiting in Celestia's throne room for Tyrek to arrive. The stained glass window marking Twilight's coronation, one of the windows marking every milestone in the series, melted. And the library, Twilight's home from the first episode, destroyed. We have no idea what's coming, knowing only to expect anything. But through it all, the characters remain their true selves, and we stick around for their trials and tribulations, their struggles, their celebrations, and their failures. I think this is the season that made a lot of people fall in love with the show all over again. As for season 5, with so much focus on the main 6 this time around, I wouldn't be surprised if next season balances things out with some other characters taking center stage. We already know that all bets are off as far as things we never thought would happen. The only thing we know for sure, with the abundance of character development this season, and the confident strides forward taken by this finale, is that the show and the characters are growing up. Thank you everyone for tuning into the Season 4 episode reviews here on Everfree Network. Leave any thoughts or suggestions you guys have in the comments. You know I love hearing from you guys. A huge thanks to Larscis, Index, Kibbie, Kiniro, and Wub for joining me here today, and for putting up with me. You guys are awesome. And that's a wrap for Season 4. If anybody needs their pony fix between seasons and hasn't checked out the comics yet, they've got a charm all their own, and the team behind them gets the show, gets the characters. I strongly recommend checking them out. I'll see you guys back with Season 5 here on EFN Presents.